19, text number 33. I'll recite the Sanskrit. Tribi kramer ima lokan vishvakaya kramishati sarveshvam vishnave datva muda vatishyase katam. Translation. You have promised to give him 3 steps of land in charity. But when you give it, he will occupy the 3 worlds. You are a rascal. You do not know what a great mistake you have made. After giving everything to Lord Vishnu, you will have no means of livelihood. How then shall you live? So this is Sukracharya speaking to Bali Maharaj, and Sukracharya is very upset at Bali Maharaj. So we'll read the purport. Bali Maharaj might argue that he had promised only 3 steps of land. But Sukracharya, being a very learned Brahmana, immediately understood that this was a plan of Hari, who had falsely appeared there as a brahmachari. The words Muda Vartishyase Katam reveal that Sukracharya was a Brahmana of the priestly class. Such priestly Brahmanas are mostly interested in receiving remuneration from their disciples. Therefore, when Sukracharya saw that Bali Maharaj had risked all of his possessions, he understood that this would cause havoc not only to the king, but also to the family of Sukracharya, who was dependent on Maharaj Bali's mercy. This is the difference between a Vaishnava and a Smarta Brahmana. A Smarta Brahmana is always interested in material profit, whereas a Vaishnava is interested only in satisfying the Supreme Personality of Godhead. From the statement of Sukracharya, it appears that he was in all respects a Smarta Brahmana, interested only in personal gain. Om Gyanatimirandasya Gyanajana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitam Yana Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. This verse and purport really highlights the idea of real gurus versus fake gurus. And more importantly, specifically in this verse, Srila Prabhupada is going into the difference between Smarta Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. You got the word Smarta Brahmanas. I don't know if that's where you got the word smart from, but Smarta Brahmanas, they're very much just interested in rules and regulations. They're interested in philosophy. They're interested in logic, but they're missing one main ingredient. And what is that main ingredient that they're missing? It's bhakti. Just like you have all the parts to the body, you have the head, you have the arms, the legs, but if you don't have your heart, then you can't really operate. So a Vaishnava has bhakti, and that's what differentiates him from the Smarta Brahmanas. And we can see this very early in even in Krishna's pastimes. There's that one story where Krishna and Balaram, one day they were starving. They were super hungry. And they went to the Smarta Brahmanas, and they knocked on their door and they said, can I have some food to the Smarta Brahmanas? And the Smarta Brahmanas, they're just like, go away, get away from here. And they don't realize that actually the duty of the Brahmana, the duty of the Smarta Brahmana is to serve Krishna, is to serve Vishnu. So they're doing all these yagyas, they have all these Vedic hymns, but they would have made so much more benefit if they just gave Krishna and Balaram food directly. And then Krishna and Balaram were pissed and they were disappointed, and they went away and they went to the Brahmana's wives and they told them what happened. And the Brahmana's wives immediately gave Krishna and Balaram all the food they wanted. So again, this is the difference between Smarta Brahmanas and the Vaishnavas. Smarta Brahmanas are just interested in logic, like that. But the Vaishnavas, they have their heart. And that's a very important feature to have. So it's the duty of a Brahmana to lead people to Vishnu. And I just think this pastime is so interesting because here we have Sukracharya, who's a Brahmana, and he knows that this little dwarf is God. And he goes to his disciple, Bali, and he tells Bali, hey, don't give him anything. He's God. He's Vishnu. You're not supposed to do that when you're a Brahmana. You're supposed to give everything to Vishnu. So the question might even arise, well, why did Bali Maharaj, who's a Vaishnava at heart, why did he even choose a spiritual master like Sukracharya? You know, just like when you go shopping, you do window shopping. And a lot of times for us, we also do guru shopping. It's very important that we're very discriminative and we find the right spiritual master. So why did Bali Maharaj choose Sukracharya as his spiritual master? This is, I feel, an important question. And if we go back a few chapters, we see that Bali was a great fighter. He was a great warrior, but he actually died on the battlefield. And Sukracharya, he had these mystic powers being a Smarta Brahmana, and he was able to bring Bali back to life. So based on that context, then Bali felt indebted to Sukracharya. Like, oh, this person brought me back to life. Let me be his disciple. So then you can see that the whole reason Bali took shelter of Sukracharya was of no spiritual reason at all. It was simply on the bodily basis. It was simply on the material basis. And Sukracharya was thinking, oh, if I make Bali my disciple, he's gonna conquer all the worlds, and he's gonna make sure that we're gonna be really good with our livelihood, and I could just like sit back and relax and put my feet up. And this is why I want to bring Bali back to life. So there was a hidden motive, a hidden agenda. And this is not the reason why you choose a spiritual master. And this is not the reason why you choose to have a disciple. It should be on a complete spiritual basis. Just like in Bhagavad Gita in the 4th chapter, we read, Tad vidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadyakshanti te jnanam jnaninastatu darshana. Tattva darshi. The word darshi is where you get the word darshan, like you take darshan of the deities or darshan of the temple. It means to see. And tattva means truth. So a real spiritual master is supposed to be a tattva darshi. He's supposed to be a seer of truth. And this is the real reason why you're supposed to take shelter of a spiritual master. But this is not the case here. This is not the case with Bali Maharaj and Sukracharya. It was simply on a bodily basis. And you could even see very early on that Sukracharya had a real personal motive to get Bali to fight again. Sukracharya then gave Bali a gift. He gave him 2 gifts right away. I mean, usually the disciple is supposed to give a gift to the spiritual master, but here spiritual master is giving a gift to Bali. And what gift did he give him? He gave him a chariot. And usually you don't give someone a chariot unless you want them to be on the battlefield. I mean, it's kind of compared to, imagine today your spiritual master gave you an AK-47. It's like, what am I supposed to do with this? So he gave him a chariot. And then he gave him a second gift, which was a conch shell. And we see from the 1st chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the reason why you have a conch shell, that's how fights are started. And I highly doubt that Sukracharya was trying to get Bali Maharaj to be a pujari. So this was the intention of Sukracharya, to really get Bali to become a fighter so he could conquer the world, so Sukracharya can be relaxed. And even the word Sukracharya, Acharya, you have the word Acharya in there, which means a leader, but Sukra means semina, which means that Sukracharya was an Acharya simply by birth, but not by quality. So within his name, you can see the somewhat of the downfall. So when this whole incident is now occurring right now, what we're speaking about, that Sukracharya is upset because Bali Maharaj is about to offer everything to the Supreme Lord. And Sukracharya is trying to stop him because he's very much concerned of his own personal motive. At this moment, Bali Maharaj rejects his spiritual master. Now, this is a huge offense, right? To reject your spiritual master, to disobey the orders of the spiritual master. We talk about how this is one of the greatest offenses. But Bali Maharaj was able to reject them based on the premise of Shastra. And this is why Shastra is so important. There's one golden rule in Bhakti. If we're thinking about all the instructions, all the philosophies that we've been taught, there is one rule which is at the topmost, which Srila Prabhupada often mentions, and that is to accept everything that is favorable to Krishna consciousness and to reject anything which is unfavorable. And Sukracharya became unfavorable to Krishna consciousness, and at that moment, Bali rejected him. And because of this action that Bali did, this is how he became a Mahajana. There's only 12 Mahajans out there. And because Bali took this step, we are now meant to follow his footsteps. And this is the importance of this instruction, that we must accept whatever is favorable to Krishna consciousness and reject whatever is unfavorable. So the 12 Mahajans, every time I put myself on this spot of trying to name the 12, I always get like 10 or 11, but let's try it. There's Brahma, Narada, Shiva, four Kumaras, Kapila Dev, Yamaraj, Sukadev Goswami, Bali, Swayambhuva Manu, King Janaka, Bhishma Dev. Anybody want to write in the chat?
Prahlad Maharaj?
Prahlad Maharaj, that's right. Yes, so this is actually really interesting because who's Bali Maharaj's grandfather? It's Prahlad Maharaj. So you see that those samskars come down. Actually, if you think about it, Bali Maharaj is a Gurukuli. Yeah, this is the importance of being in that heritage. So again, the topic of today is really understanding real gurus versus fake gurus. When I think of this word guru, G-U-R-U, I think about giving us real understanding. That is what a guru is meant to do. And even if you take the word gurus, and you rearrange the letters, you practically get the word sugar. So gurus are meant to be sweet, and they're meant to give us real understanding. And when I think about these two combinations, I can't help but think of Srila Prabhupada, who is a real guru, who is a real acharya, and has led us to freedom. He actually, Srila Prabhupada exemplifies this verse in purport, because Prabhupada was not on the Bengali platform at all. In fact, when he was in India, he was surrounded by all these smarta brahmanas, and they were telling him, don't go to the West, don't go to America. They're full of malechas, they're completely sinful, they're untouchable, they're degraded, you're not supposed to go there. But Srila Prabhupada understood that Vishnu resides in everybody's heart, and Lord Chaitanya's mercy has no limits. And he got on that ship, and it took over 30 days, 2 heart attacks, landed in America, didn't know where to go, so much struggling and suffering. He came in the winter time, the coldest season. And this to me is a real hero. A real hero is not somebody who builds empires in this world. A real hero is somebody who teaches you how to get out of this world. And Srila Prabhupada went through tremendous suffering and sacrifice in order to save us. Earlier on in the 8th canto, we read about Lord Shiva and how he drank an ocean of poison. And it was mentioned in the verses that followed that this is the highest form of sacrifice that you can do for Lord Vishnu. This is the highest form of worship that you can do for Lord Vishnu. When you go through voluntary suffering, when you go through voluntary pain in order to rescue the pain of others, this is what pleases Lord Vishnu the most. And when you think about what Srila Prabhupada did, this is exactly what Prabhupada did. He went through tremendous suffering in order to save us. So I feel that Lord Vamanadev, he took 3 steps to save the demigods. Srila Prabhupada, he took 3 million steps to save all of us. And we are completely indebted. And the way to pay back this feeling that Prabhupada has given us, we must now raise our consciousness to come to the highest level. There's 3 modes to material nature. There's the mode of ignorance, lazy, dullness, etc. There's the mode of passion. You're working very hard, but your mind is always in misery. You're always suffering. You're wanting material achievements. And then there's the mode of goodness, which the smarta brahmanas were on. And you can be very puffed up in that mode of goodness. But there's something higher than the mode of goodness, and that's the mode of greatness. And the mode of greatness is the mode of the Vaishnava. So with this spirit, we can really imbibe this and do wonderful acts on behalf of Srila Prabhupada in order to help others. I know my service when I was living in the Los Angeles temple for several years was Sankirtan, was book distribution. And living in LA, there's many posh areas. There's Malibu, there's Beverly Hills. And I remember going to these places and setting up book tables. And it was hard to get people to stop. They would just walk by. Their life was comfortable. But when I went into the inner cities, when I went into the Black and Latino neighborhoods, when I went into the underprivileged communities, people were lining up. They were practically running to get these books. And I even remember this one incident where there were a lot of people coming to get these books. They were so happy. They were so thankful. They were saying, thank you for being here. And then a police officer came, and the police officer was trying to shut our whole operation down. And then the people started fighting with the police officer, saying, no, he needs to be here. We really need this. We really need what he has right now. Please don't stop him. And he was able, those people were able to convince the police officer to keep us going. So I've really seen real transformations on Sankirtan. And I've also seen just unfortunate events and just the need of us to step up as soldiers to try to help others as much as possible. My service now really involves helping kids reach higher consciousness by trying to give them these values at a very, very early age. And I even remember this one incident when I set up a book table. I had a sign that said free meditation books. And this little girl, she was maybe 6 or 7 years old. She came up, she was running to the book table, and she was so excited to see all these meditation yoga books. And I gave her a yoga book, a perfection of yoga book. And she held it up and she's like, "Is this for me?" And I said, "Yes, you can have it. This is for you." She started dancing and twirling around. She was so excited. But then her father came, and her father said, "What are you doing over there? Get away from there and drop that book." And the girl's like, "Why, Daddy? He's giving it to me." And the father's like, "Come on." And he grabs her hand and drags her away. And she starts crying and she's looking at me and I'm looking at her. And I just think, wow, what an unfortunate situation. Um, it just makes me emphasize how important it is for us to step up as Sankirtan soldiers, to just be part of this world and try to help spread this mission as much as possible, because the world needs it now more than ever. I know we live in a time uh, where there's a lot of fakeness. Again, the topic of today really is about real gurus versus fake gurus. And there's a lot of fake stories out there. There's a lot of fake news out there. And there's a lot of fake social media gurus out there. But Srila Prabhupada is giving us the real substance. And if we can step into that limelight, if we can step into that feeling, then we can do marvelous things in this world. It's COVID time and disease is very contagious, but devotion is also contagious. And if we can become exemplars of these shastras, if we can become exemplars of what has been given to us by Srila Prabhupada, then we can become true acharyas and try to help this world as much as possible. So I think I will stop there, and I thank everybody for listening and being part of this Sangha. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna devotees. Thank you, Jaya Chaitanya Prabhu, for very concisely putting both the importance of Guru as well as how Srila Prabhupada is offering this opportunity to all of us to practice true devotion and sharing your sweet Sankirtan stories also. Thank you so much. So, devotees, anybody would like to add, have a comment, or appreciate Jai Chaitanya Prabhu? You're free to do so. You all can unmute yourself. Adi Pushpa, you want to add something?
Well, some people say that Prabhupada is the only guru and there's no other ones. Some people say there are only so many Mahajans. You mentioned that. And there are a number that were indicated. So I could ask it as a question. Is it possible for other people to come to the platform of Mahajan?
One time they told Prabhupada that, "Prabhupada, there's 12 Mahajans." His disciples said, "Prabhupada, there's 12 Mahajans, and you're the 13th Mahajan." And Prabhupada said, "Yes, and you're the 14th Mahajan." So yes, the legacy of the Mahajans still continues as long as we follow the Mahajans in the proper consciousness.
Right, the people that say that Prabhupada is the guru and nobody else can serve in that capacity. They give the analogy, if you have an apple tree and the apple falls from the tree, the apple goes in the earth and it has the seed and another apple tree can come. So if they say Prabhupada cannot train someone else to serve as spiritual master, they're minimizing Srila Prabhupada's potency, right? So it's quite possible. I mean, Prabhupada is exhibiting extraordinary, just, extraordinary level of tapasya and surrender and wisdom and love for Krishna. But he is also, like you say, he's also asking us. And Lord Chaitanya instructs, on my order, become guru, save the land. That we're all meant to be guruing, repeating what we've heard, giving it to others, and encouraging them to act in that capacity, right?
Yeah, to me, Ari Purush Prabhu, you're like the 15th Mahajan. And I remember being in New York, and I was there in the winter time, and it was freezing cold, and I came out to serve with the interfaith, and that feeling of serving created so much warmth that I had to take off my jacket. So what you're doing is incredible, and I bow down to you.
We give the credit to Srila Prabhupada who asked us to do this. We accept the appreciation, but we pass it on to where it really should go. That's important. This is for everyone. So we invite you to come back or do it there. You know, we're meant to give. Some people will say we should go in the closet and close the door and take out the hand sanitizer and protect ourselves. But at one point, people will say, what did the devotees do when the chips were down? Did they run to the front lines? Did they reach out and try to care for others? Or were they just trying to protect themselves? The Prabhupada came to the worst place. And even now, people say, Prabhupada is not just sitting down someplace in a cozy situation. We're sure that he's going to someplace where there's a need for Krishna consciousness. And we're also called like that. Don't be afraid. If there is a big weight to lift, then it's a time to exhibit strength. If there's a fearful situation, then it's a time to be courageous, right? When there's a need, we're meant to give. And by Krishna's grace, in the last week and a half, we've increased Krishna's prasad distribution. We had 3 separate days, one 2 weeks ago, one yesterday, and one in a few days, where we distributed more than 600 meals in a day. It's a small thing, but we're doing what we can, and extending Krishna's mercy beyond our financial capacity, in confidence that somehow or other Krishna will help us to keep this going. Some people tell me, why don't you go someplace cheap and do this? New York is so expensive. Go someplace warm, right? Why should we have this Bhakti center in this expensive city? We should go someplace where it's easier. But this is where Prabhupada came. The physician goes to the sick people. The fireman goes into the fire. The lifeguard goes into the deep water where someone is drowning. And that's where Krishna is calling us.
Yeah,
So
it's the mood of Prabhupada, because Prabhupada came to America. Thank you very much, Adi Purush Prabhu.
Prabhupada.
If there's any other questions, comments, and I think Gorsharam Prabhu, there might be something in the chat.
Yeah, you can check the chat also. Rajani was saying if you want to share more Sankirtan stories.
Oh, we'd be here all day.
Go on.
Well, one story I could share is that everyone is looking for this wisdom. Everyone is looking for this knowledge. It's all about the right time in their lives to then receive it. I remember setting up a book table at a local university, and this one this one lady, she was maybe 100 feet away. She saw my sign, meditation books, and she just started running full speed at my table. And she kind of looked like a quarterback tackler or something like that from football. I thought I was about to get tackled. She came running to the table and she just grabbed a bunch of books and she said, thank you so much for being here. This is so special to me. And I could see that she looked like a yogi, you know, outside of her purse was like a yoga mat hanging. She had a bunch of like crystals and whatnot, and she looked all yogaed out. And I'm like, wow, this is so nice. So nice that you're into this culture. And I'm so happy to be here to give you all these books. And she said, you know, if this was 30 days ago, I would have never stopped at this table. I would have completely walked by. I would have not even paid attention to you. And I was like, really? 30 days ago? I mean, you got this yoga mat, you got like all this stuff going on. Like, what happened in those 30 days? And she began revealing that she works 9 to 5. She goes to school Monday through Friday. Her usual program is Friday, Saturday, Sunday, hit the clubs, go to the parties, drink, that type of lifestyle. And 30 days ago, it was a Friday night. She was at the party. And then 2 a.m, she comes out of the party. She's kind of stumbling. She walks to her car and she feels something here. And it's actually a gun. And she got held at gunpoint. And at that moment, her entire life flashed before her eyes. And she realized how precious life is, how rare this life is, and how much seriousness we should put to this life. And luckily, she got spared. And because of that encounter, she took a complete dive into spirituality. So in the same way, there's so many living entities out there, but those that come into contact with a experience like that, then they start to really realize to go much deeper and to really find the essence. So that's one story I can share.
We have until 8, Prabhu. If you want to continue, that's fine.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so many stories.
Hare Krishna.
Haribol Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Jaya Chaitanya Prabhu, wonderful and inspirational class. Thank you very much. You mentioned how you what's your takeaway from that service?
Yeah, I didn't hear the first part of the question. It was kind of fizzing out.
Hare Krishna, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah, you mentioned how your service is now sharing devotional service with children. Do you adjust? Do you make adjustments? Do you have to water it down? How do you get the points across to a kid? What's your realization from that service? And stories, of course. Thank you.
Well, I give Bhagavad Gita classes to children, and there's no real watering down. You can be as direct as possible because they're coming for a Bhagavad Gita lesson. And then I'm also trying to attract the general populace in America, the public schools, the private schools. And there you have to be very careful because if you come across in any religious type of sphere, then the government usually shuts that down very quickly. But if we can try to use our intelligence to implement these spiritual teachings in a very universal way, then at least it's changing the gear, it's changing the compass, and it's giving them higher goodness to then really strive for. So it takes some creativity to make it happen, but we are definitely trying to do whatever we can to make it happen. And we've seen wonderful results with that activity as well. You think about the consciousness of a child, it's just like a sponge. And the things that we experience from ages 1 to 6 go so deep within us, whether it's the toys we play with, whether it's the music we listen to, whether it's the movies and videos that we watch. So we're just trying to provide as much goodness as possible. So at an early age, if they can encounter these higher conscious subject matters, then maybe later on in life, they could come to the path of Bhakti Yoga.
We recently had an experience. Mother Raleigh, she's a community member for the Bhakti Center. She brought out 11 10-year-old girls from the Rudolf Steiner School. And like you say, when you go into school, they're very, very, very restrictive about anything that has anything to do with religious. So she brought them out with the understanding that they were helping to feed the homeless, which, you know, people can appreciate whether they're religious or not, that there's somebody in need. But when they come out, then we had a little class in the park. And these girls, they were crying in the class. They were laughing in the class. They were cheering in the class. I never saw it, you know, and it would seem like they had a tremendous hunger to hear these simple truths presented without any filter about devotional service, about love of God, and about, you know, caring for others as an offering to the Lord. I was blown away by how grateful they were to hear the truth, you know. And then they came and they served prasadam. And then after prasadam, we said, well, did you have a good experience? And they were, yes, yeah. And then we said, well, you want to come out here again? They said, yes, we do. And then we said, well, forget about school. Just come out here and do that. Yes, we'll forget school. So, like, you know, that it's in the heart of everyone to hear the truth and to engage in devotional service. And if we can engage them in devotional service, there's a teaching moment. There's an opening there where somehow or other Krishna does something to them magically. The miracle of devotional service, we believe in that. And they want to hear, they want to understand why they're doing what they're doing and what is exactly what they're doing. There's so much welcome to hear it. Like you said, the innocence of the children is just astounding. Just a recent experience. Hare Krishna. All glories to Prabhupada.
Yeah, I think Jesus says you can't enter the kingdom of God unless you're childlike.
Not childish, but childlike. That we have that innocence and that willingness to hear, and very, very beautiful quality of consciousness in the children. Sometimes they don't have the word service in their vocabulary. Child is just thinking, now what do I get? And now what do I get? And now what? But when we offer that understanding of service, and when they have an experience and an opportunity to do service, we found that they just jump in and they, wow, I can do service. And then when they come out again, they go, I want to do service, right? They really relish learning how to give, how to serve. And Krishna, you know, reciprocates with that by giving them a taste, a higher taste. Devotional service is the life of the soul. It's normal, it's natural.
Yeah, what happens when we do perform devotional service, it's almost as if life becomes a friend, and death in a way also becomes a friend. Just like if you have a good Samaritan, a good civilian, and he sees a police officer, he sees that police officer as a friend. He's not worried about the police officer. But if you have a thief, if you have a criminal, and when he sees that same police officer, he's very much afraid. He's always looking over his shoulder. And in the same way, when death comes, for the devotee, death is a friend, is a good police officer. But for the criminal, he's very much worried. He's very much afraid. So I think what we're given with this devotional service practice is we're allowed to truly fall in love with life, fall in love with Krishna, fall in love with the devotees. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, Lord Chaitanya asks Ramananda Roy, what is the greatest misery for a devotee, the greatest suffering for a devotee? And Ramananda Roy says the greatest suffering is to not have the association of devotees. The association of devotees, the sadhu sangha, it's our life and soul. And when we have these components in our lives, then life becomes a friend. Devotional service is very beautiful, and we can truly flourish as much as possible.